Quite literally, the term philosophy means love of wisdom. In a broad sense, philosophy is an activity people undertake when they seek to understand fundamental truths about themselves, the world in which they live, and their relationships to the world and to each other. To make such a pursuit more systematic, academic philosophy is traditionally divided into major areas of study. Metaphysics is the study of the nature of reality, of what exists in the world, what it is like, and how it is ordered. In metaphysics, philosophers wrestle with such questions as: is there a God?
What is truth?
What is a person? What makes a person the same through time?
Is the world strictly composed of matter? Do people have minds? If so, how is the mind related to the body?
Do people have free wills? What is it for one event to cause another? Epistemology is the study of knowledge. It is primarily concerned with what we can know about the world, and how we can know it. Typical questions of concern in epistemology are: what is knowledge? Do we know anything at all? How do we know what we know? Can we be justified in claiming to know certain things? What is it for one event to cause another? Another important aspect of the study of philosophy is the arguments or reasons given for people's answers to these questions. To this end, philosophers employ logic to study the nature and structure of arguments. Logicians ask such questions as: what constitutes good or bad reasoning? How do we determine whether a given piece of reasoning is good or bad? The study of ethics often concerns what we ought to do and what it would be best to do. In struggling with this issue, larger questions about what is good and right arise. So, the ethicist attempts to answer such questions as: what is good? What makes actions or people good? What is right? What makes actions right? Is morality objective or subjective? How should I treat others? The study of philosophy involves not only forming one's own answers to such questions, but also seeking to understand the way in which people have answered such questions in the past. So, a significant part of philosophy is its history, a history of answers and arguments about these very questions. What often motivates the study of philosophy is not merely the answers or arguments themselves, but whether or not the arguments are good and the answers are true. Moreover, many of the questions and issues in the various areas of philosophy overlap, and in some cases even converge. First and foremost, the terms idealism, idealists, or rationalism are not only confined in limits of philosophy. We have heard those terms being used in our daily activities. We even say that idealism of the youth, he is an idealist, and many more. There are different types of idealism, but for our purposes, we will not dwell on them at length. In its general context, idealism answered the question on the composition of reality as the product of the mind. According to George Berkeley, all that exists are ideas in the minds. The skyscrapers that we have now, the marvels of engineering technology, and the breakthroughs of the sciences are all products of the mind or idea. For Immanuel Kant, idealism does not concern itself with the existence of reality, rather for determination of things is not possessed by themselves. Rather, things or objects are determined by the mind or idea. Kant called this as transcendental or critical idealism. In its general context, realism proposed that something exists outside the mind and independently outside the mind. Two concepts are to be highlighted. First, existence, and second, independence. Something therefore exists, if its existence is independent of other things. For example, the moon exists independently of the earth, and vice versa. Existentialism, as a philosophical tradition, holds that individuals, to be authentic, must have independence or freedom, and it is only through freedom that they can truly exist. To live in this world, one should be free to decide the course of one's life. We are condemned to be free, according to Jean-Paul Sartre. Within this context, human beings cannot be fully understood in terms of the other. Empiricism believes that we learn through empirical facts, formed either through deduction or induction. So in this case, it can be derived that, for the empiricists, there would be no innate knowledge or concepts. Moreover, our acquisition of knowledge is based on the processing of empirical facts, not on individual object. According to Markey in his article entitled Rationalism versus Empiricism in 2021, our knowledge is gained, not only triggered, by our experiences, be they sensorial or reflective. Experience is, thus, our only source of ideas. Functionalism is based on the premise that all aspects of a society, such as institutions, roles, norms, etc., serve a purpose and are indispensable for the long-term survival of the society. In this theory, it presupposes that all forces, agencies, or elements have roles to play in society, and these elements are indispensable. Furthermore, the functions of these elements are fixed, and cannot be changed. Just like the anatomical parts of the body, their individual functions are fixed and non-interchangeable. Thus, according to the French sociologist Émile Durkheim, it was necessary to understand the needs of the social organism to which social phenomena correspond. This theory was developed by Levi Strauss. It argued that society is structured in a way where individuals perform their roles according to the demands of the social structure. For instance, in kinship system, individuals will perform their roles according to the social structure, either as a parent to their children, or as children to their parents. Having said that, philosophy is an attempt to answer perennial questions, the schools of thought we have mentioned here are some few attempts to answer those questions. For the realists, events that happened in our lives, your experiences that you have gone through are real, for these experiences are independent of the person. Our happiness in times of triumphs are real events, so also the sadness we have in times of failures. In relation to ethics, morals are independent of the person and society. Morals are criteria which make an action right or wrong do exist independently of the ego. Thus, moral criteria are objective and non-personal. For the idealists, everything we have in our environment, including how we use and consume resources, are expressions of the idea. Urban planning, technology invention, quality assurances evaluation, and many more are outcomes of the idea. So, change the idea, and everything in the world changes. In relation to ethics, the criteria of right or wrong are products of the idea. Being products of the idea, so therefore, the morality of an act is not bound by any particular instances. So the goodness of an action stems from the idea of goodness, and not from the differences or acceptability of it, as judged by a culture, people, or society. For the empiricists, since it advocated informed judgment, morality therefore is bound on the rigorous method of the empirical sciences. Acceptance of an act, therefore, is anchored on societal or cultural acceptance. Existentialism can be summarized into this statement: I am the master of my soul, and the captain of my ship. What these statements emphasize is the virtue of freedom of choice. So therefore, morality of an act is judged upon the individual's exercise of freedom in choosing options. Freedom therefore exists, if options are made available, before we choose to act. For structuralism and functionalism, these two theories advocate that these elements are needed for society's survival. Society is made up of structure, and each component of a structure has a function of their own. In the context of ethics, each social structure may have its own standard of an acceptable act. To the victor belong the spoils, as former U.S. Senator Andrew Jackson would describe it. Based on our exposition, we can come to the conclusion that our life should be governed by a philosophy. We may call it our philosophy of life. In the development of our philosophies, they should manifest our perspective of the world, our relationship with one another, and the authenticity of our existence.